Bless God. At the end of the book of Genesis, Joseph brings his family to Egypt. They were given Goshen, a place for them to live, and they lived there, and they thrived there. But then in Exodus 1, verses 7 to 14, we read how things changed. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, "Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let's deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us, and escape from the land." Therefore they set taskmasters over them, to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramesses, but the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. This isn't my message, but that verse just jumped out at me there. The more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. Sorry, that's completely distracted me, but I believe that's a word for the church. Oppression should bring multiplication. Okay. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and all kinds of work in the field. In all their work they were ruthlessly made them work as slaves. So Israel enters Egypt as free people. But as they multiplied, they began to be feared by their host nation. The service of Joseph that he saved Egypt from famine was forgotten. And they had taskmasters to answer to. They lost their freedom, and their lives became all about their work. As a result, their worship began to suffer. As they lost their liberty, they lost the time they'd worship, and they lost the will to worship. As they lost their liberty, they found themselves in a terrible position. And God raises up a deliverer. The name Moses literally means to pull out. His ministry's in his name. That was his calling in life. And God speaks to Moses in the wilderness. And listen to what he says. Exodus 3, verse 18. "And they will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, 'The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. And now, please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Let us go so that we may have time to sacrifice to God. Give us time to worship.'" Just 3 days. Now, right up front, before he says any of this, God already says to Moses, "I'm going to totally set your people free." But I find it fascinating that the opening pitch to Pharaoh isn't that. It's about time off to worship. They were slaves of a culture that demanded they work and work and work and didn't give them time for worship. And God knew they didn't just need their freedom. What they needed was time to worship God. I wonder if some of that feels today a little bit familiar. In this post-COVID world, certainly a lot has changed. Regular attendance at church is now defined at least twice a month. It's been redefined for so many. Only 16% of pastors consider weekly attendance now to be the standard, while 30% of pastors see bi-weekly attendance as regular. Work shift patterns and non-traditional schedules are having an impact on church attendance. Many individuals, particularly those who work in industries like healthcare, retail, logistics, face irregular or weekend work hours, making it difficult to attend consistently. While technology allows for instant communication and can reduce loneliness for some, excessive digital interaction often correlates with feelings of increased isolation and depression. Studies have found that the heavy use of social media and digital tools can lead to social comparison, reduced face-to-face interactions, feelings of inadequacy, all of which contribute to loneliness. Message today is called Be Connected. Be connected. Or let my people go to church. Maintaining your connection to God and His church. Maintaining your connection with worship. And it's been a wonderful morning so far, hasn't it? They are essential for us. They're essential for our spiritual well-being. They're essential for our growth. But also they are essential for our emotional well-being. The demand to Pharaoh is this, Exodus 9:1. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews says, let my people go, that they may worship me.'" Let me tell you this morning, the first thing that the enemy will come after in your life is your worship. Because it's your worship that keeps you connected to God. As we draw near to Him, He draws near to us. Worship is you putting God in His rightful place. Worship by lifestyle, worship by prayer, worship by song. I put song last because sometimes we put it first. All of this reinforces our connection to God. Because when we worship, we are proclaiming Him worthy. So the first thing we need to realize is we must break free of the Pharaohs in our life. Let me tell you, we face many Pharaohs, many obstacles to our worship. We have the Pharaoh of demanding work schedules. This one's, it's hard because we need to work. But the idea of understanding as Christians, we need time to worship and we need time off for that. Well, the world is getting less and less understanding, and some bosses don't look kindly on someone who says they want to go to church on Sunday. Well, that's not being a team player, is it? We have the Pharaoh of busyness, which means we have overpacked schedules with work. But not just work, we have family obligations, we have activities that leave little time for worship or fellowship in our life, and things that will come up, things that will challenge our time. How do we react to them? If the family rocks up, do we dare say to them, "Sorry, I can't do that, I'm going to church"? We have another Pharaoh, is the time mindset. The mindset of, I'll go to church when I have time. Let me tell you, if that's the mindset, I can guarantee you, you'll never have time. The time mindset traps people in a cycle where worship always comes second. Another Pharaoh is the Pharaoh of technology. We have today endless entertainment options available to us. Streaming services, social media, gaming, all of this consume our time and our attention. We have the Pharaoh of secularism. We're in a culture now that views our faith as outdated or unnecessary. And the pressure to conform to society can make people feel embarrassed when they try and prioritize their faith. Embarrassed to go to work and say, look, I'm going to struggle to work on Sundays. We have the Pharaoh of materialism that puts wealth and possessions front and center. You don't understand, you see. I've got to work more hours because I've got to get this done. I've got to work more hours to afford what I want replaces I need to worship and honor God. We have the Pharaoh of convenience. Online church and other remote options. And hey, we do this, and I know for some it is an absolute lifeline. But it can lead to complacency about physical attendance and physical involvement. It can raise up this mindset of why bother when I can watch online in my pajamas. And this overlooks the importance of face-to-face community and face-to-face service. Now, some, I don't misunderstand me, you can't make it here. I know that. And it's a vital connection for you when you can't. But let's not be fooled. Some can, but choose not to. And there's a wide, wide gulf between those two things. Don't let convenience rob you of connection. We also have the Pharaoh of cynicism. Negative experiences with church that Christians have can lead to bitterness and a reluctance to connect. You know, I've been hurt before. The church, it's not for me. Church is full of hypocrites. It can serve as excuses to stay away. Now, I think there's another offshoot of this, the Pharaoh of preference. This church isn't quite meeting my standards. Therefore, I'm not going to go. I don't think the atmosphere is quite right. I don't think the worship's good enough. I don't think the teaching's deep enough. So what we do is withdraw from it, because what we're seeking is perfection. And let me tell you, if you ever find a perfect church, actually, I wasn't going to say, I was going to tell me and I'll join it. No, finding the perfect church, I tell you, it isn't going to happen. But there's some people get stuck in this mindset and they find themselves unable to go to a church because no church is ever going to meet their standard. All they can actually do is sit in judgment of the church they don't go to. There's the Pharaoh of exhaustion. Mental, physical, emotional burnout can leave people feeling too tired to participate and not having that level of enthusiasm. Instead of turning to God for renewal, they end up withdrawing further, and that just deepens the cycle. Oh, I just don't feel like I can make it there today. But then next week, no, I can't. I just need a day to relax and gather myself together. It's been a busy week. Forgetting that actually when we come, what we should be receiving is relaxing and gathering ourselves and getting ourselves ready for this next week. There's the Pharaoh of individualism. The idea, well, I can worship God on my own, in my own house, which leads people to undervalue the role of community in church and ignore some instructions in Scripture that you can't do by yourself. A Pharaoh will control your time, it will dominate your heart, and it will take a high place in your thinking. A Pharaoh will keep you from worship. It will keep you from fellowship, and it will keep you disengaged. Pharaohs steal your worship. I wonder this morning what Pharaohs you face. What keeps you from fully engaging? What is the force or situation in your life that you need to break free from? Listen, I can't identify it for you. I've mentioned some possibilities, but it may be something else entirely. We all have things that threaten to keep us from connection to God and connection to each other. But I want to speak to your Pharaoh this morning. And I want to say to your Pharaoh, let my people go, that they may worship. We must break free from these patterns. We must break free from these situations because it damages us when we lose our connection. Disconnection is dangerous. In 1 Corinthians, Paul compares the church to a body. 1 Corinthians 12, verses 12 to 27. And it's a long section, this, but I think it's really worth reading all of it. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we are all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body does not consist of one member, but many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. The eye can't say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And on those parts of the body we think less honourable, we bestow the greatest honour, and our unpresentable parts are treated with greater modesty, which our more presentable parts do not require. There's a sentence. But God has so composed the body, giving greater honour to the part that lacked it, that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honoured, all rejoice together. Now you are the body of Christ, and individually members of it. I think it's an interesting passage, this. Often we talk about it in a way that's, if one person thinks there's something else, they think that's the only way to be useful. Like, for example, everybody wants to be an eye, but not everybody can be an eye. So if you're not an eye, find what you are. And that's all. That's a very valid way of reading this, finding our place in the body. It's important to know the place that we have. But there was something that struck me in reading at this recently. So can I just do a little diversion before I come back to how disconnection's dangerous? If the foot should say, I'm not a hand, therefore I'm not part of the body, Paul's talking about people who feel like they don't fit. People who don't really feel part. There are many people who look at church and feel like a square peg in a round hole. So they stay on the fringe, stay on the outside. Feel I don't really feel like I'm part of this. Not because they don't want to be involved, they just can't see where they fit. Maybe this morning this is you. Maybe it's somebody watching. You look at the things that are going on in church. You see the people on the platform, the people on the doors, the people who commit to coming to the prayer meetings, or the people who enjoy really getting into the studies. Next one's on Tuesday, by the way. And you think, I get that works for them, but I just don't feel like I'm any of those parts. Maybe I don't fit. Maybe this isn't for me. But do you see what Paul is saying to you? You might feel like you're not part or that you don't fit, but the body is so complex. It needs this huge variety of parts, and you are part of it. The key is finding what you are, not focusing on what you're not. See, we can spend all of our time thinking about the things we're not and miss what we are. A hand, that can seem like quite the calling, can't it? Hands lift things. My hands don't lift things quite as well as they should do. That's heavier than I thought it would be. Hands work. Hands change things. Hands create. Hands tear things down. And a foot looking at a hand can go, well, I can see all the things I can't be. I can't lift. I can't work. I can't create. As a foot looking at my hand, I can see all of the things I can't be. But I forget my role. The hands can do nothing if the feet don't get them there. Hands are useless without feet. I can't lift up that stool without my feet getting me to the stool. If the foot's focused on not being a hand, the foot misses, it's got an important job. Hands cannot work if hands cannot arrive. The foot is vital to the work of the body. The body contains many, many parts. All of them in isolation do nothing. And all of them suffer if a part is gone. Feet and hands have a lot in common. I've got quite long toes, so they actually, my feet and hands look a little similar as well. I don't have nice feet. Don't look at my feet. But they're designed for a different use. My foot is not designed to pick that up. They have different designs even though they look similar. You see, you have a purpose. You do fit. You are part of the body. The only part of the body I think we can really do without is the appendix. And I don't believe God makes... No, we can't do it without the appendix. Okay, then forget what I just said. Everyone has a place. Everyone has a role. It may be the role you have doesn't exist yet, but it's there waiting. It's prepared by God for you. It may be something the pastors ask you to do that you never imagined yourself doing. But they felt the leading of God to ask you to do it. The question is where do you fit? Well, let's ask a question. Who has God designed you to be? Because I understand there's anointing for roles, and that when we're gifted in the world, it doesn't always mean that that's what God would have us do in the body. But there's something God has put in you. He formed you in your mother's womb and made plans for your days when there was none of them. God planned what you would do as part of the body. When he formed you, he made you. That's when he made you both through nature and nurture to be able to achieve the calling he has on your life. You are baptized into one body. If you're baptized into the body, you are part of the body. But finding your function, finding what your part is, that's key to understanding what God has for you. See, the body has many parts. Most of the parts of my body function unseen. I don't know what's going on in here. All I know is sometimes it sounds a bit like a chemical works going on in here. I don't know what happens in there. But everything in there is needed. Everything in there does something. And whether I know about it or not, if it stops functioning, I'll be aware pretty quick. It's just a little diversion, but I just felt it was an important one to take. Let me tell you, if you feel like a square peg in a round hole, all you need to do is find the square hole. There's one here, somewhere, that God has created for you to fit into. But let me go back to disconnection. Disconnection is dangerous. Now, I need all the parts of my body. I do, and I'll suffer without them. But let's just say I have an accident and I lose this hand. What happens to me? Well, it'll hurt. I'll suffer. Quite a lot, I imagine. I'll be limited. I won't be able to do some of the things I can do now. I'll never get round to learning the piano, I guess. But you know what? I'll adapt. I'll adapt. It's amazing to see at the Paralympics people competing with lost limbs at a far higher level than I'll ever be able to achieve with all my limbs. I'll survive. I'll learn to get by. Yes, I'll always feel the loss. But as a body, I will continue. And I'll still thrive in life. On the other hand, my hand, when it's disconnected from my body, it can't thrive. It can't survive. It loses access to the life-giving blood that is pumping through my heart. As a result of that, it no longer gets oxygen. It no longer gets nutrients. It loses its lifeline. It might appear to be intact for a little while, but it's dead. And slowly, it begins to break down. My hand can't survive without my body. You know, in the Addams family, they spent a lot of money to make a hand walk around without a body. You know why they had to use special effects to do that? Because it doesn't happen any other way. That's right, it's impossible. You get the analogy, of course. When we get disconnected from the body, we find ourselves in a very dangerous place. Pharaohs in our life keep us pressed. They'll take our focus. They'll limit our time. But let me tell you, disconnection kills us. I wonder where you might seem disconnected. What is there in your life that's putting you in danger of getting separated from the body? We thrive when we're connected to the body. And the body thrives because we're part of it. The reality is, me and my hand, we need each other. I need to be in church for the good of the church because I have something to offer when I play my part. But I need church more than church needs me. I need the life. I need the nutrients that come through it. And that brings us to the last main point today. What church does for me. Ephesians 4, verses 11 to 16. We're reading this passage a lot at the moment, by the way. Not just because we're doing the book of Ephesians on a Tuesday, but it keeps coming back up. It actually came up on Thursday for those who were in life groups. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds and teachers. Why? To equip the saints for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we attain the unity of the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves, and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love. So why did Jesus give the ministry gifts to the church? Not to fill the seats up. It was first to equip the saints for works of ministry. In other words, teach and encourage people to reach others, which we tackled on Thursday night. If you feel sometimes that we talk about evangelism too much in church, can I just say, please take it up with Paul, because he told us to talk about it. But also for building up the body to maturity, so that you may no longer be children, which is defined here as someone who's tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, human cunning, and deceitful schemes. In other words, these gifts, pastor, teacher, prophet, they are all there to help us grow in maturity in Jesus. Not to make us feel good, not to vindicate us, but to stretch us and to build us. How do you build up your body? Probably asking the wrong person here. Gary, how do you build your body up? You lift weights. You lift them. See, I've seen some videos of Gary, and Gary can lift a lot of weights. You have to push your body beyond what's comfortable, don't you? If you just stayed with comfortable, would it make any difference? No. You have to go beyond what's comfortable. You have to give your body something that it struggles to handle. Yeah? That's why I have no muscles. Because I don't like doing that. I remember, he's not here today, but Paul Graham did a fitness sort of thing with me. Has anyone ever done a fitness thing with Paul Graham? I thought, this is going to be embarrassing. I'm going to die at Paul Graham's feet. He pushed my body beyond what it was comfortable going to. And I thought, I don't like this. I really don't like this. Church should not be teaching you at the level you're at. It should be stretching you. It should be causing you to step out in faith into things you've not done before. And you should feel the strain a bit. Now, this can be done through serving in an area you're not sure about. Oh, that can do you good. It can be about stepping out into the gifts when, boy, it seems scary. It can be about sharing your faith in times you wouldn't do it. It can be about engaging with teaching that stretches you other than just going over the stuff you already know. It's like, oh, I know I can lift that one. Now, within limits, of course, if I was to start with 100 kilograms, I'm guessing I'm not going to be able to lift that. Can you do 100 kilograms? I don't know how heavy that is. 150. Say, I couldn't do 100. Couldn't do it. So there's got to be limits, of course. There's no point in setting the teaching at a level I'm not going to understand. But I should be stretching. I should be stretching. Now, this doesn't include teaching. It includes our relational side in church, our connection. Now, that really hard to do when you're not here. But I tell you, when you're connecting with people, when you're spending time with people, when you are working on the relational side of church, when it's hard, it's doing you more good. Because it's stretching you. When you struggle with some people, those people are probably causing you to grow more than the times that you're getting on with them. In fact, there's probably something to be said for spending time with the people you struggle with. Because they're really going to get your patience. Oh, I tell you what, that's like some people are like dumbbells. They might be hard work, but they are building your spiritual biceps right up. The point is this. We don't go to church because there's more people in the room. We go to church to grow. Consider this our spiritual gym. We go to church to grow. We go because we need the nutrients. Otherwise, we will find ourselves tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine. We start to get into the weird stuff, and pretty soon we arrive at heresy. And there's a lot of it about. Oh, there's a lot of it about. Some of it just seems exciting to start with. But then the further you go, the more you go, oh. Church is here for our good. Identify the areas in your walk that you need to stretch just that bit. Identify the things where you need to grow. Identify and understand that it's the connection you have in the body that you need to grow and thrive. It is not about filling seats up, but realizing the more people in the seats, the more people are growing and getting built up. The more people are able to be effective, and the greater the change that the church can bring in the world is. When you come to church, this might be a revelation to you. You're not doing God a favor. You're plugging into the vital body that provides the life-giving blood and oxygen that keeps you vital. Now understand, the world today is busy. I get it. And it will take its toll on your connections. It will take a toll on your worship and your connection to the body. Why? Because these things matter and the enemy wants to disrupt them. He will use an increasingly fast-paced world to do it because he will use whatever he can get his hands on. The increased isolation in society, the increasing business in the world, the mental strain that it puts on us. What is the antidote? It's to be connected. We have many Pharaohs in our lives. First, we must identify them. And when we identify them, we need to speak to them. We need to be intentional. We need to break free of them. Church, I want to speak to the Pharaohs in your life. Can we stand? I want to speak to the Pharaohs of work, the Pharaohs of busyness. Oh dear. The Pharaohs of family, the Pharaohs of technology, secularism, fear, materialism, cynicism, exhaustion, individualism, whatever the ism is, or whatever system is getting in the way of your worship. I want you to name your Pharaohs this morning. Call them out. Don't be afraid of somebody hearing what's getting in the way of your worship, but call it out. Call it out as we are praying right now. Just start praying. Just start praying. And I want you to speak to the Pharaoh that's keeping you from fellowship. I want you to speak to the Pharaoh that's keeping you from worship. I want you to speak to the Pharaoh that's keeping you down and keeping you disconnected from the body. And Lord, I just want to say, let my people go. Let my people go that they may worship. Let my people go that they may be rested. Let my people go that they may receive the life that comes from the body of Christ. Let my people go that they may be stretched. Let my people go that they may serve. We speak to the Pharaohs this morning and say, let my people go. God parted a sea to free his people from a Pharaoh. Let me tell you, God will tear down walls to free you from yours. But you must give it to him. Give it to him. You are the one who sets your priorities. You are the one who decides what matters. You are not, and this might be a revelation to some of you, you are not limitless. You are not limitless in your capacity. There is a limit in your life on how much you can do. You're only mortal. You're only human. Your ability, your time, your focus, you only have so much of it. So the real question is how do you prioritize it? How much of your time do you give to God? How much of your energy do you give to God? How much of your focus do you give to God? Let me tell you this morning, we make time for the things we value. So remember, worship, fellowship, they are vital to you. Make them a priority. They should be foundational, not optional. Engage with the body. Find your role. Serve until you find it. You know, there's a phrase, fake it till you make it. Just serve until you find the place you fit. I've seen children learn how to put those things in holes. You can sit down now, unless you don't want to. I've seen children work at putting those in holes. You know how they eventually do it? They keep testing every hole until they find the right one. Find your hole. Find your role. Use what you have. Use it to grow in God, to grow in faith. Church, we all need to be connected, for it does us all good. You know, we live in a world that is becoming increasingly polarized, increasingly isolating, and church is a place where we come together. People from backgrounds that you would never normally see mix, standing side by side, lifting up their voices as one to worship the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. On a message like this, you'd normally open with this passage, but don't worry, I haven't forgotten it. Hebrews 10, verses 24 to 25. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. All the more as you see the day drawing near. Let me tell you, all the more as we near the end. All the more as more trouble comes your way. All the more as we head into uncertain times. Is it the habit of some to neglect? Yes. And it always has been, right back when Hebrews was being written. But it's my prayer that it will not be the habit of you. God bless you.